So this next exercise and conversation is about people as resources. So human resources. Human resources in the context of ministry. What percentage of what goes on in your ministry is from human resources? Of 100%, how much percent is provided by human resources? 100%. 100%. And then of that 100%, how much of it is volunteers? What percentage? 80, 90%? Yes. And pushing toward 100, depending on how you look at it, particularly with what we expect ministers to be and do. All things to all people, available 24 hours a day. The depths of despair, the depths of the human phenomena, the highest of times two, often without breaks, without understanding that they're a human being too. That they're not, at least I've not met one that walks on water. I'm open. Again, I'll film it. But in the meantime, we put our britches on like everybody else, one leg at a time, with our own human foibles and inner worlds and fears binding and things like that too. So ministry then is a profession, a calling, just like your profession. So, and even for what portion is paid, there's a lot of volunteering that comes even from the minister's position. So this topic then is people as resources relative to stewardship to a body, to a ministry. Stewardship includes one's responsibility for every aspect of the individual's lives and the community life as a body. It is managing every gift that one has to offer. Individual gifts are resources for the well-being of the whole. Individual gifts are resources for the well-being of all. The scriptures characterize human nature as communal and interdependent. We are wired for connection, hardwired to be in community, familial. We're hardwired for it, which is since recorded time, people joining in communities of some sort. We are created to share our gifts, our resources, and ourselves with other people. That is the fulfillment of our own creation. The same is going on in your members. Grace, gratitude, and gladness are relatives. I'm reading at the top of that first page. Grace is a gift. It is something you can never get, but can only be given. How does that strike you? I'd like to hear from you on that. Grace is a gift. It is something you can never get, but can only be given.
Undeserved, always present for us if we accept it.
Always present if we accept it. Darlene? Yes, it brings a sense of humility, of living more humbly.
I was raised in a spiritual tradition that required work, and so I've had to relearn this definition that grace is a gift to me, not something I work for.
Fantastic. And are we displacing that on the congregation? That grace is something they have to work for? Versus, no, you have grace and my grace, and we provide grace as leaders regardless of what you do. That it's not contingent on what you do, but it's contingent on you being a human being. Your presence here matters. regardless of what you're contributing here.
Do you distinguish between grace and mercy?
I don't know, how would you speak about grace and mercy? The difference. Anybody want to speak to that?
So grace is this free gift thing, and mercy is like being let off the hook for wrongdoing.
As a connotation of receiving mercy as a result of something that was done. Previously.
So mercy in relationship to an act or an action or a situation, something that occurred.
Grace is just
To be taken off the hook, to drop, to be let go, to be relieved, forgiven, mercy.
And grace is just like the sunshine. That's it. It just is.
What is? There's no possible way to deserve grace or earn it or create it, any more than you can deserve the smell of a perfume or earn a happy disposition or create your own genes. Genes. Have you noticed? Wouldn't you like to be the creator of your own genes? You know, we didn't create this. It would have looked a lot different if I'd have created it. The gift that is free can only be received, not to be manufactured. Gratitude shapes acts of giving. A thankful heart is expressive. It generates generosity, a readiness to give, a responsiveness to need, and an ability to offer proportionately. Generosity, a readiness to give, a responsiveness to need, and an ability to offer proportionately. Giving is not obligation. Giving is opportunity, an expression of thankfulness. Trusting in the goodness and grace of God, one gives in a spirit of trust and gratitude. From Matthew, freely you have received, freely give. 100 times every day I remind myself that my inner and outer life depend on the labors of other persons, living and dead. Albert Einstein affirmed, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received, and I am still receiving. So giving without end. Giving and receiving as circular. One transaction. The giving is the receiving. The giving is the receiving. Gladness is the spirit of the giving. Each person gives not reluctantly, begrudgingly, or under compulsion. God loves a cheerful and willing giver. Donation is rare in species other than our own. We are incredibly giving species. We know that life is strengthened through sharing. We know that to live is to be given and to give. Giving is rooted in mutuality. Gladness springs in both directions, offering and receiving gifts. So I want you to have some conversation at your table about your best practices for human resources. What are your best practices for treating people with grace, with generosity, with gratitude, cultivating a community of stewardship, accepting human beings where they are, as they are, cultivating a community of stewardship. How do you treat people well? How do you offer grace? How do you express gratitude? How are you generous? Where are you generous? Like that. So have a little conversation at your table. Take a list, make a list if you can, so that we can benefit the whole group here by sharing whatever we come up with. Our best practices around building stewardship, human resources, relative to grace, generosity, gratitude. You got a few things on your list? So this is how you can share your best practices with some of the other ministries here. So it's also hopefully a time for you to reflect to see how well you're doing. You know, the mind has a tendency to talk about what we don't get done, what we didn't get to. Oh, if we could only do that. And then it doesn't pause to have a deep appreciation for just how much you're doing already and for how much you're providing already. So it's an exercise in that too, to really reflect to see we're really cooking along pretty well here. And is there some other ideas, of course? Is there always innovative ways to look at this? Yes. Is there something to learn? Yes. So who can start? Now, if you hear one from the other table, just check that off of your list. So we'll look to combine a list. So if you hear something like Circulation Day, and that was yours, how you provide, you know, a chance for people to recirculate their things and part of teaching the law of circulation, then if you hear something like that, either check it off or ask questions. How do you do it? How often? Like that. Tithe and donate on a scheduled basis, and make it known that you do. Like demonstrate. Even, I'd love you to consider, if you aren't already, to show what the benefits of some of that are. Some of the things they're doing that would empower people in your community to be part of that, whatever it is, if it's youth development or prayer, World Day of Prayer, fountain building, tower building, or whatever's going on, that they could see that they're a part of something bigger than this. So to express thanks, not just for what you're doing, but who you are, the presence you bring, the essence of you. Yeah. Yes, being heard, or having where you stand to have some value to it.
And being trusted.
To being trusted. You mean like through like a sense of empowerment?
Yes.
Yes. And I know relative to volunteers, that's some of the key elements of that. If volunteers are not equipped, like educated about this is how to do this, and then empowered to do it, they don't last long. Just like you wouldn't. If you went in and it was disorganized, you don't know what to do around here, people are asking you questions you can't answer, like that's just not a cool scene. And if somebody's breathing down your neck, pointing out everything you're not doing, trying to get you to do it their way, it's not all that much of a sweet pill either. And it sounds simple, doesn't it? But these patterns can be pretty difficult to come out of. If we got to sit and watch them learn how to tie their shoe instead of me jumping in there to tie their shoe for them, versus just letting them get their bearings and their own ways and to express themselves, not like I would, but how they will. And then I can learn from that. Shared responsibility, so very important. And when I ask now, one of the signs of health to an organization, remember the pray and play and eat, is are your former board members still around? It's a sign of health. And if your former board members are not around, that's a clue. That's a clue. That means adult educators, like using the gifts of the people in your community so that they get to express what they're already competent and able to do well, instead of, as Greg says, dictating how it's going to be. Like you can do it as long as it's this. It's like they can't do that. They're not equipped to do that. They wouldn't do that well. Versus saying, do what you do well as long as it supports the mission.
The mission, that's the important.
Yeah. Which that means set limits. So if somebody's trying to do something outside the mission, or that you can't see a coherency for what they're doing relative to the mission, not to allow it. That would set limits to say, you know, that's not allowed. You're welcome to do something else, but not that. Or what else could you do? So that you don't pussyfoot around that either in the name of hurting somebody's feelings or whatever else. That your primary role as leaders is to keep the integrity of the mission and vision is under your watch, and not somebody's personal agenda. How does it serve the whole? Not how does it serve Marie? How does it serve the whole? And then to bear the heat of that when they don't like you or when they don't understand. Allow things to fail. Yeah.
and so what, you know?
Yeah.
Something else then.
Try something else. Be willing to fail. Like, be intentional in it. Like, let's just try it and see. Every successful thing that's ever been done, the biggest of the successes, had a lot of failures. The Thomas Edison ideas, Walt Disney, those folks, like, it's like they had to kiss a lot of toads in there to find something that changed the world. Not just something that worked, but something that changed the world through failing and failing and failing and failing. And to accept that as a ministry, that's the schema. That's the scheme. We're in a trial and fail error. I mean, a trial and fail territory. We try to tie our shoes and fail and trail and try and fail. And then one day we can tie them. It's like we're off to the next. But then we got to learn how, by failing. Every single thing we've ever done, it's a part of our creation. Building field coherency, vibrational coherency, meditations, sound meditations, silent meditations, group meditations, praying together. And it's like you're working at a high C and doing everything you can to hold that note. Then whatever you offer is built around that. And some musician taught me this, because I don't know notes from another. And then the resistance and the lower form would be a B flat. And if you can hold this note long enough, the lower note comes in attunement, entrainment to the higher note. So then whatever we're doing, whatever we're offering here, is done so consciously and not out of patterns the way we've always done it, not out of a fear to change or fear of hurting somebody's feelings or whatever else the case may be. Some wonderful best practices here. And hopefully at lunch, you'll get a chance to do a little bit more of this. So think about then teaching prosperity from a place of grace and gratitude. I'm reading now from the page 36. Researchers surveyed more than 100 people who were committed to serving others. He discovered 8 factors that enhanced a generous spirit. Only some of the factors were unique. Number 1 on that bullet point, being not a number, just a bullet point, being seen and accepted and respected as a child. What's the chances that the majority got that? What's the chances? Exactly. Even if we had it, we're focused on the times we didn't have it. 1 publicly active parent, growing up in a home environment that was hospitable to the outside world. Living in a safe and diverse neighborhood, not many of us, safe but not very diverse. Having contact with committed adults, being taught how by somebody doing. Participating in some kind of religious activity, engaging in youth groups, and using mentors. So can you see that most of us didn't have that? Then I want to go back to the page that is number 35, which is the second page. Cicero believed that gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all virtues. The attitude of gratefulness brings blessings. Consider this research about the products of gratitude, these research findings. People who expressed gratitude were found to exercise more regularly and have fewer symptoms. More well-being. Grateful people have more well-being. They feel good about their lives as a whole and are more optimistic than those who focus on hassles and deficits. People who practice gratitude interventions in their daily life report higher levels of alertness, enthusiasm, determination, attentiveness, and energy compared to those who focus or are concerned about troubles. You know this from your own experience. When you get focused on what's wrong, your vitality and your luminosity dial, it's a physiological effect. People who attend church services engage in church activities such as prayer or reading spiritual or religious material are more likely to be grateful. You know this from your own reading. When you get away from your own readings, things that inspire you, that awaken you, we have a tendency to drop that. More grateful people acknowledge a belief in the interconnectedness of all life and of a commitment to and a responsibility for others. That I have a responsibility for and to humanity. Whatever I do affects the whole. Grateful people relative to less grateful ones are less envious of wealth and wealthy people. They're more likely to share their possessions. They place less importance on material goods and are less likely to judge success in the terms of accumulation. Gratitude develops with an awareness, a healthy conscious maturity, the ability to appreciate our own blessings, and taking time for reflection. What am I grateful for? What do I have? Obstacles to gratitude include having a sense of privilege, having a sense of entitlement, a perception of oneself as a victim, holding on to materialistic value, and having a limited vision with respect to how others contribute to our own well-being.